What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 49 of Retro Buyer's Guide. This week we're going to be taking a look at my top 5 Sega Genesis games. That's Mega Drive for you folks over in PAL territories. I originally intended this video to be the top 10 hidden gems on the Sega Genesis, and I hate that term, but I wanted to highlight some games that I thought were really great, that were super underrated, and maybe somewhat still affordable. Unfortunately, after 3 hours of taking footage for that video, the hard drive crashed and I lost everything. And so, to make up for lost time, I have made this top 5 Sega Genesis games that I want to highlight in this video. I'm going to briefly go over the Sega Genesis as a console, but mostly this is going to be about the top 5 games that I think are worth collecting. So, without further ado, let's just get right into it. Now, the Sega Genesis actually had 2 different controllers. This is the second controller that was released when Street Fighter II was all the rage, and you needed 6 buttons, and I actually quite like it. This is the 6-button controller here. You got an X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C. The first iteration of the Sega Genesis controller came with just the A, B, and C button. And I really think that this controller is comfortable to hold and it feels nice in your hands. So let's take a look at the console now. So this is the Sega Genesis Model 1 here. There were actually 3 models of the Sega Genesis. The Model 2 being slightly less wide and being a better fit with the Sega CD Model 2 that was released. This one I actually have an extender plate that goes under the base to keep it from looking quite so unsightly when it's plugged into the Sega CD Model 2. But anyway, let's talk about the Model 1. So the Model 1 is a pretty iconic design, I think. You've got these little knobs over here that I think are really interesting. This is the volume for the headphone jack, which is actually right there on front. Your on-off switch, your reset button there, and then 2 controller ports here. I love this whole design, Sega Genesis 16-bit. I think that kind of encapsulates what was happening at that era in terms of the bit wars and Sega and Nintendo squaring off with each other. Let's take a look at the side here. This is the expansion port, and this is actually where the Sega CD plugs into to give it the power of CD technology and being able to read all those awesome full motion video games that you love. And on the other side, nothing much there, just bare plastic. Alright, let's take a look at the back here. So typically Sega Genesis Model 1s have RF out, and that's where all of the sound and video comes through one cable, and you'd have to use an RF adapter and screw it into the coax connector on your TV. I thought that at the time that S-Video was the ultimate in video quality for retro consoles, and so any console that I had that didn't output S-Video, I sent it off to get it modded, and so this RF connector has actually been replaced with an S-Video out. Later on, I discovered RGB video and SCART, and how you can get that through this connection here, and all of the game capture video that you'll see in this video was through RGB SCART, going through this connector here. And I'm really glad that I discovered that, but again, at the time I didn't know, and so everything was S-Video. And it's actually not that bad on the Sega Genesis, to be honest with you. And this is actually, the switch has been taken out here, and a extra headphone jack has been put on the back to allow me to get stereo audio without having to tap the front here with the headphone connection. So that is the Sega Genesis Model 1. We're going to plug it back in here in a second and take a look at my top 5 favorite Sega Genesis games. First game on my list is Streets of Rage 2. Now this is a certifiable classic for the Sega Genesis. This is the second game in 3 in the series, and it's a side-scrolling brawler. You can pick from one of 4 characters or play 2 characters simultaneously. And like I said, this is one of my favorite games of all time for the Sega Genesis. In the game, you make your way through each stage, beating up hordes of enemies until you meet up with a boss at the end of the level. In addition to your normal punches and kicks and super attack, you can also pick up weapons and food items which will restore health. Each character has a unique moveset that also helps add variety to the gameplay. I like that you can see each enemy's health bar as you're attacking them. And speaking of enemies, there are some pretty unique ones in this game. Get out of my way, Y-Signal! One thing that a lot of people always point out about this game is its excellent soundtrack, and I couldn't agree more. It was put together by famed Japanese video game music composer Yuzo Koshiro. In interviews at the time, Koshiro said he was inspired by electronic dance music, specifically house, techno, hardcore techno, and breakbeat. Whatever the inspiration, he created one of the most memorable soundtracks in the Sega Genesis library. Give it a listen! Next up we have Shinobi 3: Return of the Ninja Master. The game was released in 1993 as a direct sequel to The Revenge of Shinobi. And like its predecessor, you play as Ninja Joe Musashi as he takes on the evil crime syndicate Neo Zed. Your primary attack is throwing a limited number of shurikens that you pick up throughout the game, although you can also kick and use your sword in close proximity to enemies. Musashi also has other tricks up his sleeve with the ability to use ninja magic. These 4 ninjutsu techniques can only be used once per level unless you pick up a special icon, and include a temporary shield, a fire dragon, boosting your vertical jump, and self-sacrificing, in which Musashi gives up a life in order to heavily damage enemies on screen. And like Streets of Rage 2, Shinobi 3: Return of the Ninja Master also features an excellent soundtrack on the Sega Genesis hardware. A lot of people complain about the FM synthesis sound chip in the Genesis, comparing it to fart noises and whatnot, but if it's programmed well, I happen to think it can sound amazing. What do you think? Castlevania Bloodlines has the distinction of being the only Castlevania game released on the Sega Genesis. Luckily, it's a really good one. Instead of playing as one of the iconic Belmont vampire hunters, you can choose between 2 playable characters, Quincy Morris's son John Morris and his best friend Eric Lecard. While Morris uses the familiar and very tried and true whip, Eric Lecard uses a spear for his main weapon. You also have additional sub-weapons you can use like the axe, boomerang, and holy water, just as in previous games. One notable thing about Bloodlines is Konami's use of special effects to get the most out of the Genesis hardware. It's not uncommon in a level to see elements moving around in the background, layers of parallax scrolling, or even reflections. A lot of these things just shouldn't seem possible on the Genesis, but Konami's programmers were able to eke out every last bit of that 16-bit power. Next up, we have Megaman: The Wyly Wars. Now, this one was never released physically in the United States and only came out on the ill-fated Sega channel, but I was able to get my hands on a reproduction copy, and that's how I was able to capture footage for this video. Like Bloodlines, this is the only Mega Man game to be released on the Genesis from this franchise.
Mega Man The Wily Wars are complete remakes of the first 3 games for the Nintendo Entertainment System, plus a bonus tower level that unlocks once you beat all 3 of them. Anyone who's familiar with the Mega Man games on the NES should be very familiar with this. Here we're taking a look at the Woodman stage from Mega Man 2, one of my favorite games of all time. Graphically, I think Capcom did a great job recreating all of these iconic stages on the Genesis hardware. The music also sounds great too. While most people who are familiar with Mega Man have probably already played through the games on the NES, serious Mega Man fans will probably want to check this one out if they're not already aware. Just seeing these games programmed on the Genesis hardware with richer colors is a sight to behold. Not to mention, there's some of the best platform games ever released on any system, Genesis or NES. The only flaw of the Wily Wars, and it may be a deal breaker for some, is that the game is prone for some of the notorious slowdown that Genesis is known for when there are a lot of sprites on screen. Personally, I don't think it affects the gameplay too much. I just think it's neat that you can even play these games on the Sega Genesis. What do you think?
Last but not least, the greatest Sega Genesis game ever released. Truxton.
Truxton may be my favorite shoot-'em-up ever released on any system. Developed by Toaplan, this vertically scrolling shoot-'em-up arcade game was ported to the Sega Genesis in 1989, and thank God it was. While a lot of vertical shoot-'em-ups are horribly unforgiving and fall into the bullet hell genre, Truxton can be picked up and played with relative ease, and though it offers a decent challenge, it's still a lot of fun. Your firepower comes in 3 distinct forms, each of which can be powered up. You can also pick up speed power-ups, which will allow you to maneuver around the screen more nimbly, and you have access to a screen You also have access to the Rainbow Circle Death Shot, which will do heavy damage to enemies. While it's certainly not as graphically impressive as some of the other games on this list, I think Truxton holds its own, especially when you consider it was released in 1989. There are a lot of other great shmups on the Sega Genesis, take for instance Musha or Grindstormer, and they're all great in their own right, but Truxton just may be the most affordable and the most accessible out of all of them. What do you think? That is going to do it for episode 49 of Retro Buyer's Guide. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Please keep hitting that like button. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already to keep up with future videos. I really appreciate you guys. Hopefully I will get out that Sega Genesis Hidden Gems video sometime soon, but until then, take care and happy collecting.